Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I don't know, I might start trying to wear the outfit again. Not when I'm riding the lawnmower or digging a hole in the garden or something, but in public I might have to start trying to wear this again. Hare Krishna, we'll see how it goes. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. I mean, it's not like, I have a job, because I'm retired, and I have to dress kind of like in street clothes, because I have some kind of a job that I do, either a receptionist or maybe a professional person, or I know devotees who are like lawyers and doctors, and they wear regular clothes because they don't want to confuse things in their occupation, just to get their work done. Hey, but that go up. I tell you, there's a lot of stuff churning, and I mean, that and the heat, I'm like delirious, I'm like, I finally put the AC on because I was going into delirium, but I might have to start dressing like this again, I mean, it's been like 30 years, I have a couple of them in mothballs. I took them out because I was out in the world. I had a job, I had a business, I was working there. So I just got in the habit of wearing regular clothes. Not to confuse, what I had to do by what I was wearing. To just look like everybody else and get the job done and come home. But I'm not working now, I don't work. I'm retired. So I can wear these clothes now because it's not going to interfere with my job, So I might have to start doing that again because it's more advantageous for what I'm doing now. I'm going on Harinam, I'm going to home programs, so it kind of fits. Wearing this with what I'm doing, it fits better now. So I might have to start doing that, as uncomfortable as these clothes are. I get used to it again. Hare Krishna, Hare. I look a little like a Fu Manchu wrestler when I wear, sorry, but Hare Krishna, but I'm seeing that I might have to start doing that again. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, practicing more strictly also. What's my excuse for not? It's not like I have to get up at a certain time and go to work, So what's my excuse now? So I might have to, I'll just see how it goes, What is it? It's two things. Accept everything favorable for Krishna consciousness and reject everything unfavorable. So I'm trying to see what's favorable now for Krishna consciousness. What's favorable now? And I'm a slow learner, say the least. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Better late than never, I suppose. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Well, if I do start dressing like this, It'll certainly be a pioneer amongst many of my devotee friends here. I'll be a pace setter. I might lose him. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Thanks for being on my case, Madan Gopal Prabhu. Yeah, don't let me get away with anything. Hare Krishna. I was going to read from Bhagavad Gita, 8th chapter, Attaining the Supreme. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. By His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Bhagavad Gita as it is. Hare Krishna. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sari Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Not the Sanskrit. I'm not familiar with the Sanskrit, so. Well, wait a minute. The meter's pretty simple in Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna Uvacha. Kim Tad Brahma Kim Adiyatmam Kim Karma Purushottama Adi Bhutam Cha Kim Proktam Adi Daivam Kim Uchate. Arjuna inquired, O my Lord, O Supreme Person, what is Brahman? What is the Self? What are fruitive activities? What is this material manifestation? What are the demigods? Please explain this to me. Prabhupada's purport. In this chapter, Lord Krishna answers these different questions of Arjuna, beginning with, what is Brahman? The Lord also explains karma, fruitive activities, devotional service, and yoga principles, and devotional service in its pure form. The Srimad Bhagavatam explains that the Supreme Absolute Truth is known as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. In addition, the living entity, individual soul, is also called Brahman. Arjuna also inquires about Atma, which refers to the body, soul, and mind. According to the Vedic dictionary, Atma refers to the mind, soul, body, and senses also. Arjuna has addressed the Supreme Lord as Purushottama, Supreme Person, which means that he was putting these questions not simply to a friend, but to the Supreme Person, knowing him to be the Supreme Authority, able to give definitive answers. So that's what this chapter is about. It's going to be answering these questions. And scrolling over these words, when Arjuna says, what is Brahman? It lights up blue. So let's see what it refers to here. It's a hot link. Oh, meaning of the Sanskrit word Brahman, and there's like, must be 30 different references in scriptures. So there's the Supreme Brahman, and then the living entity is also Brahman. But when you hit on the link, it doesn't say what Brahman is. It just refers to Brahman's Lord Brahma, like that. So that didn't help. And then when you scroll over karma, which is another question Arjuna asked about, let's see what happens when you light that up. Karma. Okay. Activities, work, fruit of activities, action, duty, prescribed duties, reactionary work, the fate of the living entity. These are all associated in the scriptures with the word karma. Activity of life, pastimes. Let's see where that goes. Karma. That's in the third canto of the Bhagavatam, karma. It's a verse in the Bhagavatam referring to Krishna. And someone, I don't know who's, Vidura, is asking questions of Maitreya. And he's asking, Hare karma vivitsaya. And in the word for word, it's, I want to know about the pastimes of the Supreme. And karma there refers to the pastimes of the Supreme. So activities, actions, activities. So that was a broad sense. Usually when we think of karma, we think of reaction. Our karma. When we act in the material world, we get a reaction. So we think, oh, our karma, good karma, bad karma. But actually karma itself simply refers to activity. And in that Bhagavatam, we see it refers to the activities of the Supreme Lord. So he has karma. Just not reactionary karma. See, sometimes you think you understand what a word means, and then when you look at it a little deeper, there's more to it. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Okay, so that was all referenced. Somebody did a lot of work online to reference all these things. Wonderful. I'm so thankful devotees are doing things like this. The rest of us can take advantage. Okay, when you scroll over the text, yoga lights up. Let's see where yoga appears in the scriptures. I mean, this is extensive indexing. This is like really extensive. Yoga is associated with mystic power, means connection. Yoga means connect. We've heard that a lot. Means to link up. Yoga. Linking process. Devotional service in karma yoga. Okay, eightfold yoga. Different kinds of yogas. Practice of yoga. The process of linking with the Supreme by bhakti yoga. So it means connecting, mystic practice. Controlling the senses, another kind of yoga. Basically, linking with the Supreme yoga. Connecting. Linking with the Supreme implies delinking with the material. It's implied in there. If you're linking with the Supreme, you're disconnecting from that which is not Supreme. Hare Krishna. What else lights up? Brahman lights up, Paramatma, Bhagavan. Okay. Atma, when you scroll over it, that lights up. Let's see what references come up with Atma. The super soul, the self, the mind, personal, the body, the self, the spirit soul, the living entity, the living force, the heart. It really is pretty inclusive, all-inclusive kind of word. Within, spirit, living being, Hare Krishna, oneself, Atma, person, spirit, mind, living being, the soul. Kind of hard to pin him down, isn't it? Pin the Atma down. It's not material, that's why. Atma is not material. And Krishna, vital force, spirit, soul, the very self. All right, okay, that's Atma. That was that verse, Atmarama verse, where I believe it was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explained it in like 64 different ways in one sitting, and then explained it like in another several ways at another time, completely different from the first time. So the verse again, and Arjuna inquired, "O my Lord, O Supreme Person, what is Brahman? What is the self?" The Atma. "What are fruitive activities?" The karma. "What's this material manifestation? What are the demigods? Please explain this to me." Let's see what Krishna has to say about this. That's verse 1. Hare Krishna. Verse 2. Adi yagna katam kotra dehesmin madhusudana prayana kale cha katam yeyo si niyata mabi. Translation. How does this Lord of Sacrifice live in the body, and in which part does he live, O Madhusudana? And how can those engaged in devotional service know you at the time of death? That's interesting. It almost looks schizophrenic to me on a spiritual plane. He's talking to Krishna, and he's talking about a Lord of Sacrifice who lives in the body, as if it was somebody else. Like, he's talking to Krishna and he says, how does the Lord of Sacrifice live in the body? Which part does he live? How can those engaged in devotional service know you at the time of death? It's interesting how that is. I'm looking at that word for word, if maybe it's more clear. Adi Yagna, the Lord of Sacrifice. How does he live in the body? O Madhusudana. And at the time of death, Yeha, be known. How can you be known? By the self-control. Let's see what Prabhupada says. The Lord of Sacrifice accepts Indra and Vishnu. The Lord of Sacrifice accepts Indra and Vishnu. Vishnu is the chief of the primal demigods, including Indra and Shiva, and Indra is the chief of administrative demigods. Both Indra and Vishnu are worshipped by yagna performances, but here Arjuna asks, who is actually the Lord of Sacrifice, and how is the Lord residing within the body of the living entity? That's really interesting. Indra is the chief of the administrative demigods, and Vishnu is the chief of the primal demigods. And who's actually the Lord of sacrifices, Indra or Vishnu. And which one's living in the heart? Arjuna addresses the Lord as Madhusudana because Krishna once killed a demon named Madhu. That lights up. Let's take a look what they have to say about Madhu. No, we're not going to. The word Madhu is actually kind of nice. It refers to honey, and sweethearts, and fragrances, like that, sweetness. So I don't know, you get this Madhu demon, Madhusudana, killer of Madhu. I wonder what this demon was. Let's see, there's a reference here. No, I don't know. We'll have to do it another time. It's just another brief reference. It doesn't go into any details about who this Madhu is that Krishna killed. They just say that Krishna's famous for killing him. But what did he do? What did Madhu do? It'll get answered. I know it'll get answered. Because Madhusudana, he knows all this stuff. He's probably going to post the answer. I mean, it is his name, Madhusudana Das. So, come on, Madhu. What did Madhu do that Krishna killed him and he's famous for killing him? All right, we're not going to find it here. Arjuna addresses the Lord as Madhusudana because Krishna once killed a demon named Madhu. But we don't know what he did that Krishna killed him. Actually, these questions, which are of the nature of doubts, should not have arisen in the mind of Arjuna because Arjuna is a Krishna-conscious devotee. Therefore, these doubts are like demons. Since Krishna is so expert in killing demons, Arjuna here addresses him as Madhusudana, so that Krishna might kill the demonic doubts that arise in Arjuna's mind. Yeah, he's stressed out. He doesn't want to fight, and he's having a panic attack, basically. So he's asking these questions, he's grasping, he wants help. And so he's asking these kinds of questions, which almost seem to be of the nature of doubts. But he addresses Krishna as Madhusudana, the killer of doubts. So, Hare Krishna. It's part of the drama between the devotee and the Lord. Cuckoo, Hare Krishna. Krishna. Now the word prayana kale in this verse is very significant because whatever we do in life will be tested at the time of death. Arjuna fears that at the time of death, those who are in Krishna consciousness will forget the Supreme Lord, because at such a time, body functions are disrupted and the mind may be in a panic-stricken state. He's in a panic-stricken state. He's having a panic attack. So they might forget. He asks, how can they remember you at the time of death? Because he's having difficulty remembering now, faced with this huge challenge of Kurukshetra. Therefore, Maharaj Kulashekara, a great devotee, prays, my dear Lord, may I die immediately, now that I'm healthy, so that the swan of my mind may enter into the stem of thy lotus feet. This metaphor is used because the swan often takes pleasure in entering the stem of the lotus flower. Similarly, the mind of the pure devotee is drawn to the lotus feet of the Lord. Maharaj Kulashekara fears that at the moment of death his throat will be so choked up he will not be able to chant the holy names. So it's better to die immediately. Arjuna questions how one's mind can remain fixed on Krishna's lotus feet at such times. Well, this is getting pretty exciting. Let's see what Krishna has to say. Okay, Krishna is going to answer this. He said, Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, text 3. Aksharam Brahma Paramam Swabhavo Jatmam Uchite Bhuta Bhavod Bhavakaro Visharga Karma Samnita. So there's a lot of the first generation of recruits that Prabhupada made, his first disciples. They're all getting older, 70s, 80s, and they're leaving little bit, you know. So, how will we remember you at the time of death? You know? It's a big question now. It wasn't a big question in the 70s. It was like, oh, that's interesting, but, you know, I'm still healthy. I can leap tall buildings in a single bound, you know, I can. And now it's kind of like, okay, so how can I remember you? What in my throat? I already have so many physical disabilities that make it difficult just to get through the day. How can I remember you at the time of death? These questions become a little more poignant. I think that's the right word. So, Krishna says, the Supreme Lord said, the indestructible, transcendental, living entity is called Brahman, and his eternal nature is called the Self. Action pertaining to the development of these material bodies is called karma, or fruit of activities. That's the general. It's not actually karma. Karma just means actions. And if we look at the word for word, because we just learned karma really just means action. It's Krishna has karma. His pastimes are karma. They're not material karma. Bhuta Bhava Udbhava Kara is it's all hyphenated, one big long compound word. And karma is fruit of activities. It's referred to as fruit of activities here. Okay, well, they have different meanings. Fruit of activities. Actions pertaining to the development of these material bodies. That's one kind of karma. Fruit of activities. But there's other kinds of activities that aren't fruit of activities. Like Krishna's pastimes are not fruit of activities. But talking here about fruit of activities. Actions pertaining to the development of these material bodies. Prabhupada's explanation. Brahman is indestructible and eternally existing. And its constitution is not changed at any time. But beyond Brahman, there is Parabrahman. Brahman refers to the living entities, and Parabrahman refers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The constitutional position of the living entity is different from the position he takes in the material world. In the material world, his nature is to try to be the Lord of matter. But in spiritual or Krishna consciousness, his position is to serve the Supreme. When the living entity is in material consciousness, he has to take on various bodies in the material world. That is called karma, or varied creation by the force of material consciousness. Get a body according to your consciousness. Krishna is fulfilling all desires according to time immemorial. The world is filled with fools and rascals. In Vedic literature, the living entity is called Jivatma and Brahman, but he is never called Parabrahman. Parabrahman refers to the Supreme Lord. The living entity, Jivatma, takes different positions. Sometimes he merges into the dark material nature and identifies himself with matter. And sometimes he identifies himself with the superior spiritual nature. Therefore, he's called the Supreme Lord's marginal energy. You can identify with matter, in contact with it, very small spirit spark. You can identify with it, go very deep into the darkness of the material energy, identify with it, and get a body that allows you to interact with it, try to enjoy the darkness, or a spiritual body. So he called it marginal energy. According to his identification with material or spiritual nature, he receives a material or spiritual body. In material nature, he may take a body from any of the 8,400,000 species of life. Well, that's a lot to choose from. Quite a menu. Try and taste it all. You can become a frog, a snake, a turtle, a demigod, an insect. But in spiritual nature, he has only one body. How boring, right? I don't think so. In material nature, he is sometimes manifested as a man, a demigod, an animal, a beast, a bird, etc., according to his karma. To attain material heavenly planets and enjoy their facilities, he sometimes performs sacrifices, yajna. But when his merit is exhausted, he returns to earth again in the form of a man. In the process of sacrifice, the living entity makes specific sacrifices to attain specific heavenly planets and consequently reaches them. When the merit of sacrifice is exhausted, when the living entity descends to earth in the form of rain, then takes on the form of grains. And the grains are eaten by man and transformed into semen, which impregnates a woman. And thus the living entity once again attains the human form to perform sacrifice and so repeat the same cycle. Now, there's something for the scientists. They need to get onto this. They come, the heavenly planets, comes down in the form of rain. Now, Indra, he's providing the rain, and he's the king of the heavenly planets, and he's providing the rain. He's a demigod in charge of rain on the higher planets. So when the living entities, the merits of the sacrifices that he performed that got him to the higher plane, they run out, he's bankrupt, okay? He's out of business on the higher planets. He comes down, Indra is providing the rain, he comes down in the rain, which then grows into grains, rice, wheat, whatever grains, and takes the form of grains. The grains are eaten by man, because there's always somebody here. This is when a newcomer's coming, okay? eaten by the men that are already here, and transformed into salmon. I mean, this is pretty specific. Somebody ought to be able to trace this out scientifically, right? The semen impregnates the woman, and once again, that living entity gets a human form with the opportunity to perform sacrifice and repeat the same cycle, as long as he doesn't degrade and slip down into the 8,400,000 species and get stuck in the wheel of samsara for like almost forever, until he gets to be a human again. In this way, the living entity perpetually comes and goes on the material path. This is a very time-consuming process because it goes through the cycle. So yeah, been here a long time. The Krishna-conscious person, however, avoids such sacrifices. He takes directly to Krishna consciousness and prepares himself to return to Godhead. Now, I was just getting dizzy thinking about that. Going up, coming back, going up, coming back, and then you slip down through the 8,400,000 species until you, like, maybe after a zillion eons come back to a human form and the opportunity to perform sacrifice again. Oh, please. Hare Krishna. Impersonalist commentators on the Gita unreasonably assume that Brahman takes the form of Jiva in the material world. And to substantiate this, they refer to chapter 15, verse 7. They assume that Brahman takes the form of Jiva. Brahman takes the form of Jiva. Well, let's take a look at that verse. Chapter 15. And it is verse 7. I don't want to lose this page. It won't let me do it. I need to open a new window. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Okay. Krishna 15:7. Krishna. God, I look like hell. I don't know. I think it's the heat. Couldn't be old age. All right, 15:7. And that verse says, Maya Bhavamsa Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana Manak Sastanindriyani Prakriti Stani Karshati. The living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they're struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind. So that was what was being referred to. The impersonalists like to quote that, and they say that Brahman takes the form of Jiva by quoting that verse. But, Prabhupada says, this verse also speaks to the living entity as an eternal fragment of myself. The fragment of God, the living entity, may fall down into the material world, but the Supreme Lord Achyuta never falls down. Therefore, this assumption that the Supreme Brahman assumes the form of Jiva is not acceptable. It is important to remember that in Vedic literature, Brahman, the living entity, is distinguished from Para Brahman, the Supreme Lord. Yeah, so this Brahman thing, the impersonalist is looking at Brahman as being the Supreme Lord, whereas in the Vedic literature, it's Para Brahman that refers to the Supreme Lord, and Brahman refers to the living entity. So they kind of get that confused, it appears. They unreasonably assume that Brahman, which in their mind is the Supreme Lord, But actually, Brahman is the jiva. So he doesn't assume the form of a jiva. He is the jiva. Brahman refers to jiva. It's para Brahman. It refers to the Supreme Lord. Well, anyway. Hare Krishna. Well, Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Ah, Krishna. God help me. Jai. Thank you, Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.